You know, if all of life could be lived on the basis of what is seen in those moments of awareness, it would be closer to what God intends. How should tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, breathing, any lifted from the know of all nothing, human merely being, doubt unimaginable you, O God? Now the ears of my ears awake, now the eyes of my eyes are opened. The Gospel of John was the last of the Gospels to be written, 60 years or so after the death of Jesus. It was written at a time when early Christians and Jews and Gentiles were experiencing conflict and beginning to split from their more traditional Jewish brothers and sisters. And as a result, the Gospel contains a much more developed sense of Jesus as the Christ, the living water, the bread of life, and so on for those who accept the Christian message. It also tends to be seen as the most spiritual gospel, quote unquote, because it's constantly speaking on several levels. On one hand, telling the story of Jesus of Nazareth, and on the other, communicating the early church community's ongoing experience of Jesus as the Christ, as God's anointed one, God's presence in their midst. Dr. Gill, a professor of preaching and New Testament at Candler School of Theology, writes, "The Gospel of John contains narratives in which dialogue functions at two levels, leaving those who talk with Jesus in the gospel story confused, but serving as effective communication to the reader, to us, to those who read it. Rebirth, running or living water, blindness, and life all carry double meanings in the gospel." In that sense, I think the Gospel of John also speaks to us about the spiritual dimensions of our physical existence, calling us to be awake to the presence of God in Jesus and in our own fully human lives too. Another New Testament scholar, Charles Cussar, says, Jesus' miracles in the Gospel of John are extraordinary deeds that respond to the concrete situations of people in need, the sick, the hungry, the dying. But the results aren't lasting in this gospel narrative unless the miracles are also perceived as signs. Signs pointing to the God who is revealed in Jesus. The crowd's preoccupation with the temporary, this world benefits of the miracles, hey, he gave us some food to eat, diverts them from seeing what really matters in the gospel. So today's gospel reading doesn't really make sense without that understanding. When Jesus declares, "Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty," we know it's not literally true, unless you've never been hungry or thirsty. And that it speaks to us on some other level. Later in the passage, Jesus says, "Very truly, I tell you, whoever believes has eternal life." Not will have in the life to come, but has now in this life. Jesus also says, I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever. Well, we know that's not literally, physically true either. Whoever wrote those words died 2,000 years ago. So what kind of life is Jesus pointing toward here? What are the qualities of such a life? Charles Cussar writes, Jesus' miracles in the Gospel of John are extraordinary deeds that address the real-life situations of people in need. But the miracle that really matters to the gospel writer is the miracle of faith. The miracle that happens when God breaks through the misconceptions we hold about life, our pursuit of unsatisfying answers, and our self-centered worlds to reveal the radically new age embodied in and taught by Jesus. The miracle that really matters is the miracle of faith that occurs when God breaks through our misconceptions about life, our pursuit of unsatisfying answers, our self-centered worlds to reveal the radically new age embodied in Jesus. In other words, to say that Jesus is the bread of life for us is to say that eternal life, God's life, a new kind of life has been made known to us and available to us in him. The miracle that really matters isn't the bread that feeds the 5,000 in the story. It's the bread from heaven. It is for Christians, Jesus himself, the one who reveals God's love to us, making faith and a new kind of life possible. So maybe I'm not losing it after all. Maybe my love for the tangible, smellable, tastable, seeable beauty of this world and my growing sense that this world is utterly filled with the spiritual makes sense after all. Mary Oliver wrote, "The Spirit likes to dress up like this. 10 fingers, 10 toes, shoulders, and all the rest. It could float, of course, but would rather plumb rough matter. It needs the metaphor of the body. It needs the body's world, instinct and imagination, and the dark hug of time, sweetness and tangibility. So it enters us in the morning. It shines from brute comfort like a stitch of lightning, and at night lights up the deep and wondrous drownings of the body like a star."